everyone. Welcome to the basic course in the Circle Blueprint system. This is Jack Skeen, one of the authors of the Circle Blueprint, and it's my privilege to walk you through the basic concepts of this course. This is an opportunity for you to look at your life, no matter how well it's doing or how you're struggling, and to make some changes that'll make you more successful, more powerful in the world, and more content. So let's get started. There are 6 lessons we're going to cover as we go through the Circle Blueprint content. The first lesson focuses on why in the world you'd take this course. And really, it's a way to stir up your motivation to make the changes that'll make your life better. There are a few big concepts we want to cover together. The first we call units of potential. What in the world is that? Let's imagine that every human being has 10 units of potential. That's all that you have. And everybody's using a certain number of those units just to get through life. You could be using very few, and you have a sense that there's so much more inside you that's just not being utilized yet. Or you could be using most of your units of potential. And then you'd say there's just not a lot more. I'm living up to most of my potential in life. Of the hundreds and hundreds of people we've interviewed, most people say they're around a 6 or a 7. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, because it certainly means that you've accessed some of your potential, but you have a fairly significant amount left to develop. And if we could use the Circle Blueprint system to help you access 2 or 3 more units, imagine how much better your life would be, how much more successful you could be. One of the reasons people don't access more of their potential is they drift. Drifting means we aren't engaged in what we're doing. We're kind of bored or checked out. We're allowing our mind to just have its own way. We're not finding what we're doing to be that interested. Now, you can drift in your relationships. You could be in a marriage that just is not very interesting or exciting to you. You could be in a job that feels a dead end, like it's repetitive or doesn't use much of your intellect or your creativity. You could be with friends that you just don't feel connected to, and so you're pretending to be who you're not. Wherever you're drifting in life, you're missing the opportunity to use more of your potential. So the drifting worksheet is an opportunity for you to just look at some of the ways people drift and to check the ones that seem to stand out to you. So let's look at the list. You could be bored. You just think through your day. How much of your day did you spend bored? Or you could be burned out. You've been doing the same thing so long, you're just so used to it, it doesn't challenge you at all. You could be resentful. You've got anger inside, or frustration, or unresolved wounds that get in the way of you being fully engaged in your life. So I'm going to invite you, after we're finished this lesson, to go to the website and download the drifting worksheet. And then just check the ones that jump off the page at you as ways you might be drifting. So your drifting homework is to answer, what % of your time do you spend drifting? Now, you don't have to be completely accurate, just estimate. It could be a little bit, 10%. And you go, okay, that's the time I could recover. I could use that time to figure out how to be more engaged. Or it could be significantly more. It could be 50%. And then we say, wow, you have a lot of opportunity to discover how you could be more engaged in your life and how to get back in the game. And then write down, what are the top 3 to 5 ways you tend to drift? The next big idea is the thriving scale. The thriving scale focuses on the condition of your life. So we want you to think about your life in terms of its overall condition. And we'd like you to give yourself a number. So a number 1 on the thriving scale is, I'm hanging on by my fingernails. What does that mean? My life is kind of always falling apart. I'm barely managing, barely hanging on. Everybody's hanging on by their fingernails from time to time in life. Sometimes you just get dealt a difficult hand. You could have health problems or have financial stresses that were unpredictable or end up losing a job that you thought was secure. And so you go through a difficult spell, and during that time, it just seems if you can just get through it, it's a challenge. But other people live at that space in their life. It's like their life is always in a crisis. They can never find a foundation that feels secure. Their relationships are in chaos. Their financial situation is always a mess. It's like they're living from day to day, barely getting by. Are you a 1? Or you could be a 2. What does that mean? Your life is eroding. My life is declining. I have bad habits that are undermining my happiness and success. So if you're eroding, it's not always obvious on the outside. It might look like you kind of got your act together. But you're doing some things that you know are undermining your stability, your security, your health, your strength. Maybe you drink too much at night, or you never work out, or you neglect going to the doctor. Or maybe you're in a bad relationship where you're just fighting all the time. And these things, while they aren't crises, over time, they're going to eat away at the strength of your life. And if you're living in that situation, you're clearly in the eroding category. Just not a good place to be. Give yourself a 3 if you're treading water. Treading water means your life is stable, but it's probably boring and repetitive. It's a little bit like living in the movie Groundhog Day, where every day kind of feels the same. Today is like yesterday. Tomorrow will be like today. You're working at the same job you've had for a long time. You're doing the same thing. You're on the same bowling team. You vacation at the same spot, the same week every year. There's just not a lot new to stimulate your thinking or to cause you to grow. So if you describe your life that way, give yourself a 3. A 4 means I'm growing. My life is getting stronger. I'm doing things that interest me. I'm learning and changing. 4s are challenging themselves. They might be taking on a new course, picking up a new hobby, traveling the world, looking for a new job, building a new career. Anything that causes you to kind of reinvent yourself, to add new skills, to create new interests, to push and grow. So if you're in that category, give yourself a 4. And you give yourself a 5 if you're thriving. What does that mean? It means my life is as good as it can possibly be. I'm creatively engaged, excited, happy, balanced, productive, and satisfied. I find there are very few people who are a 5. Seems like some of the most successful and contented people have somehow managed to get in that category. So where would you put yourself on the thriving scale? Are you hanging on by your fingernails? Are you eroding? Are you treading water? Are you growing? Or are you thriving? Now, there's no right or wrong answer, no good or bad answer. If you're a 1, what's your plan to move to a 2? If you're a 2, what's your plan to move to a 3? Everybody should take responsibility for the quality of your life to grow it from wherever you are to the next category. So here are factors that increase or decrease thriving. And when you're finished this lesson, we invite you to go to the website and download this thriving worksheet and circle the factors you believe help you thrive and put an X across those that undermine thriving. You might be surprised what you learn about the things that you're doing that actually help you grow as a human being. And some of the habits perhaps you've fallen into that are undermining your thriving, but you haven't recognized them as so. The first step of change is awareness. So creating awareness over these issues can be extremely helpful in changing them and making your life better. So how do we lose our aliveness in life? There are 7 ideas that They aren't new, but they certainly are things that are important to recognize. One, patterns from early childhood. Not everybody has a great childhood where you have a supportive environment, supportive people, people who believe in you, who see you clearly, who champion your greatness. Many of us have had challenges in our childhood that clearly have left patterns that undermine our thriving. You may have had an overly competitive parent who pushed you into things you really didn't want to do and set you up to be fearful of a competitive environment, or to try things you just knew weren't the things you were that interested in. Or you could have been teased a lot or bullied, and it left you feeling insecure or inadequate. I mean, almost everybody has some pattern from early childhood that can make it difficult to be fully thriving. Understanding those patterns and learning how to release them or change them can be extremely critical. A second way we lose our aliveness is having negative relationships. You could be around friends who aren't kind to you, or don't support you, or don't believe in you, or don't trust you, who set high standards for who you have to be, or you have to pretend to be who you're not in order to belong. You might be in a committed relationship, but it's not a healthy one. It might be full of criticisms and judgments. One of you is always feeling poorly or getting into conflict because things aren't right. Negative relationships can really undermine your sense of aliveness over time. You might live with unresolved resentment. Oh, so many people nurse problems from the past. Somebody wasn't fair to me. They didn't treat me as they should. They were unfaithful to me. And instead of letting that go, they feed that anger and that resentment and the hurt and the wound, and they live in that space that makes it almost impossible to move toward thriving and full aliveness. Other people fill their lives with fear about the future. They worry about retirement, or they worry about their health, or they worry about the future of the country, or the future of the world, or how well their children will do in school, or how successful their children will be in sports. And that fear about what's going to happen and what can go wrong just undermines their sense of okayness and of stability and security that's necessary for thriving. As we discussed, there are people who have bad habits that they've maintained, that despite the fact doctors have told them they need to make a change, or friends have told them, they know these things are not healthy and they know they're undermining them, but they continue to maintain them. It's hard to hold on to bad habits and be fully alive. The sixth way we lose our aliveness is ignorance of the possibilities. It's so easy to get used to the things the way they are, to believe that the life I have is the best life I could ever have, to surround myself with people whose lives aren't any better than mine, and so I have no idea the possibilities of who I could be or what I could do. So settling for less than what we can have is a huge way to limit the possibilities of our life. And last, there are just people who are unwilling to change. They know the possibilities. They know what they need to do to grow. But they have kind of an apathy about life. There's just an unwillingness to take on what they need to take on to strengthen their lives and move in a positive direction. It's important for you to look at this list and to identify if you have any of these issues that are undermining your sense of aliveness or limiting your ability to thrive. So your thriving homework is to rate your life on the thriving scale. And then ask yourself, and maybe you should write this down, in what ways are you moving toward thriving? And when you're finished with that, list some ways that you're losing some of your aliveness. You take your time completing this homework so that you're comprehensive, and give it some thought. Finally, I want to tell you the story of the boiled frog. You may know it, but you may not. You know, I've been told, I have never tried this, that if you put a frog in a pot of warm water, it gets comfortable there. And then if you turn the water up, the temperature up ever so slightly, the frog adjusts to the increase in temperature. The water gets hotter, the frog stays where it is. The water gets hotter, the frog stays where it is. The frog stays where it is while it boils to death. I feel sorry for the frog, but mostly I feel sorry for people who let that happen to their lives. You could be in a bad job, and I ask you, how's your job? And you say, not very interesting. And I ask you, are you going to change it? And you go, well, it pays the bills. And I come back a year later and I say, how's your job? And you go, God, it's worse than it was last time. Now they've laid off some people. We're having to do more work with less resources. I say, well, is it interesting? No, it's even more boring and more demanding. And I said, you going to change your job? No, they kept me and I feel secure here. Then I come back a year later, how's your job? And you go, oh, it's even worse. I was demoted. But now I'm kind of in my 50s and I don't know if I could get another job, so I'm just going to stay here. And little by little, you let yourself be boiled until there's no aliveness left to your life. Or you could be in a bad relationship that's just not healthy for you. And over the years, it just gets worse and worse, and you've settled for something that you shouldn't have. And one day you wake up and realize, wow, I've lost my life because I wouldn't change. Don't let yourself become the boiled frog. So I hope this was interesting to you and you faced some issues you have not faced before. And maybe you've seen some things that have kind of awakened you to the need to face some issues, to make some changes. We're going to move on to lesson 2 and start talking about how you can make those changes and what changes you need to make. Are you ready for lesson 2?